Here's the truth. The hardest decision in real estate isn't negotiating offers or hosting open houses. It's deciding on whether to take on a listing that you know is overpriced. Because sometimes saying yes costs you way more than saying no. Even after 13 years in this business, this is still something I struggle with. Do I take a listing at a price that I really don't believe in just in order to get that listing? Or do I walk away and let someone else take the hit and hope that the seller will come back to me? There's no black and white answer, but there are patterns that can tell you what you're dealing with. So first, I always ask myself, is this seller loyal? Are they a past client who trusts me? Or are they price shopping realtors just waiting for whoever agrees with their number? If they don't trust my expertise up front, they likely won't trust it later when the market doesn't respond. Next, I always look into the property history on the MLS and the individual owner themselves. How many times has this property been listed? For how long? I've seen many listings stay up for a year or more at different prices, often different agents. Sometimes the price increases after a relist, and that's a huge red flag. So the first and most likely scenario, you're going to take that overpriced listing, it's going to sit, there's no showings, and then the seller's going to blame you. I had one property years ago in North Saanich. I believe I was the 5th agent on that file, and the 6th agent sold it after the seller dropped the price by about $150,000. The property wasn't broken, the price was. And then scenario 2 is that the seller is going to adjust with you. So sometimes you get a seller who listens. They realize that the market's not what they thought it was going to be, and they're going to adjust the price with you. I've had listings before where I was the 2nd, 3rd, even 4th agent. I took on the listing. I noticed the seller was getting a little bit more motivated. Still had to have some tough conversation about getting that price down to a realistic level, and that property sold quickly. All those agents before me, they wasted thousands of dollars, who knows how many man hours dealing with this client. I walk in, sell it within the first week, paid off for me, but that's not always the case. So I'm always checking to see if I can detect some of these signs early on in the relationship. I had one single family home in James Bay. They hired me and then fired me about 2 weeks later. And a few days after that, they dropped the price by $200,000. The property instantly sold. I noticed they were quite overwhelmed. They were very emotionally invested. They were very challenging to deal with. They often stayed home during the showings, and it just killed the energy in the room. Buyers reported how uncomfortable they felt. It was just a weird situation. So in this case, the seller's behavior was a big predictor on how that listing was going to go. If they're anxious and they're reactive now, buckle up, because you're in for a roller coaster ride. Now, I'm not always rigid about pricing every time. So if it's a unique property, something with few comparables, I'll be a lot more lenient and willing to test the market in those cases. But if it's a condo or a typical 1940s World War II home, I've gotten really good at predicting those pricing. There's just no excuse to overshoot the listing price on a very standard typical home by 10 to 15%. when it's such a data-driven segment and there's many comparables. And then, of course, there's the assessed value conversation. And honestly, this one drives me nuts. Some sellers hang on to those BC assessment numbers like they're the gospel, but those are tax tools, not market indicators. I've seen countless properties assessed at 1 million sell for 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. Other properties assessed at 1.2 million that sit there forever. Maybe their market value is closer to 950,000. The market's going to decide the value and not the tax roll. And then here's the other classic line that I always get in my listing presentations. They say, well, Dustin, let's start a little bit higher. You can always go down, but you can't go up, right? So sure, that might sound logical, but in Victoria, I see sellers raise their prices all the time, usually after firing a few agents. But the truth is, starting too high hurts more than it helps. Overpriced homes just teach the market what they're not worth. And then especially in today's market, autumn 2025 and going into 2026, pricing your property reasonably is what's going to make it stand out. Inventory is at a 15-year high. The listings that are priced just below market, they're the ones getting the best traffic, the strongest offers, and the cleanest deals. Buyers see the value, they flock, they're immediately going to compete, and that's when you can still get over asking results that every seller dreams about. So you don't need to outsmart the market, you just need to respect it. So as a realtor, overpriced listings are often a gamble. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they eat your time, your budget, and most importantly, your sanity. Before you take one, check the seller's loyalty, their history, and your gut feeling, because that will tell you more than any comparative market analysis ever will. And sometimes the smartest thing you can do is walk away. My name's Dustin Miller, managing broker at 8X Real Estate. Feel free to check out my professional MLS marketing service for sellers and buyer representation service. Those details can be found on my website. Be more than happy to have a conversation and what we can achieve together.